Newsreaders all set.
Yeah, man, everything's set, everything ready.
From the grid to Morant Point, Newstalk 93 FM has got it covered. Across the 7 seas to the 4 corners of the world, it's all captured on the 93 radar. 93.1, 93.3, 93.5, 93.7 and 93.9 on your FM dial. World News at 5 starts now.
Afternoon time for the 5 o'clock news roundup here on Newstalk 93 FM. I'm Errol Lee.
And I'm Andre Bernard.
Coming up in this newscast, PNP rejects offer from Kern Spencer to represent Northeast St. Elizabeth.
Former Prime Minister Bruce Golding says the CCJ is dead in the water because it was badly handled from the start.
Water restrictions to continue in the corporate area despite recent rainfall.
And resident of Tivoli Gardens backtracks on her claim that she saw a soldier kill man believed to be of unsound mind during the Tivoli incursion.
And now the details. The People's National Party PNP today rejected the offer from Kern Spencer to represent the party as a candidate in the next general elections. Spencer left representational politics in 2008 when he was charged with corruption and money laundering, during which time he was dragged before the court for allegedly using his companies to funnel money out of the Cuban light bulb program. In voicing his interest in returning to representational politics, Spencer had said he was considering a return if an instruction is handed down that neither Raymond Price nor Evan Redmond should go forward. However, a release from the party today said the PNP will not be considering Spencer as a candidate in the next elections. It says despite the current challenges in Northeast St. Elizabeth, it hopes the individuals will disregard any previous claims they may have suggested that Spencer would become a candidate in the next general elections.
And it's now official. Businessman Evan Redmond is set to represent the People's National Party PNP in Northeast St. Elizabeth. It is understood that Redmond was confirmed during a meeting with members of the PNP hierarchy in Kingston today. His confirmation came hours after the PNP turned down the application of incumbent Raymond Price. Last night, the PNP Secretariat issued a statement on behalf of Price. The statement was dated September 12. That's one day after a Price supporter, former Black River Mayor Daphne Holmes, took the PNP to court and secured an injunction against the holding of a selection exercise in the Northeast St. Elizabeth constituency.
Former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Bruce Golding, says the Caribbean Court of Justice, the CCJ, is, quote, dead in the water because it was badly handled from the start.
I think the whole thing has been handled abysmally. And my own view is that the CCJ is dead in the water. When that vote is taken in the Senate, it is going to fail to get the 2/3 majority that is required, so that as far as the Constitution is concerned, that issue would have been decided. And I say it has been abysmally handled because whenever you're dealing with something that has such far-reaching implications for the country, and especially where in order to effect it, you require the cooperation of both government and opposition, it is something that has to be approached by what I have sort of termed bipartisan diplomacy.
Golding says the whole matter needs a lot of work in order for both the governing PNP and the opposition JLP to reach an agreement on the controversial regional court.
There has to be work in the corridor. There have to be many sit-downs. There may have to be some horse trading. How can we reach agreement on this? Do we have to concede something here in order to get that? And it's not something that can't be done. I remember the question of the conduct of elections and how elections were managed. That was always the subject of bitter feuding between the JLP and the PNP. And I remember that after the 1976 election, Mr. Seaga wrote to Mr. Manley, who was Prime Minister, and said to him, I am urging you to seriously, jointly with us, a program of electoral reform. And he said, if you give me a commitment to do that, I assure you that you will enjoy a level of cooperation from the opposition that we have never seen before.
At the same time, Golding said he supports a referendum on the matter because he says in a democracy, the people should be the final decision makers on important issues.
In principle, it can't be faulted. In a democracy, the people are the ultimate decision makers, and particularly when there is disagreement among or between the political elite, as was the case, for example, in 1961 with the West Indies Federation. The people are the ultimate arbiter, so in principle, I don't think that anyone could fault.
He also cites some difficulties that would arise with regard to the referendum for the CCJ because the entire debate would be politicized.
The difficulty, and the government has pointed to this, is that if a referendum is held, it's likely to be so politicized and partisanized that the discussions that are likely to take place in the lead up to that referendum are likely to be about everything else except the CCJ. So it's going to be how the government has performed and which communities don't have water and who can't find a work and that kind of.
Former Prime Minister Bruce Golding speaking on Fresh Start this morning.
The youth arm of the Jamaica Labour Party, JLP Young Jamaica, has taken Prime Minister Portia Simpson-Miller to task over what it describes as her persistent use of class and gender-based politics. Young Jamaica says the People's National Party's divide and conquer mentality flies in the face of modern and constructive politics. Reacting to comments made by the Prime Minister at her annual constituency conference, the organization says it is clear that Mrs. Simpson-Miller is missing the mark on what this election needs to be about. The organization says it wants to deal with the substantive issues of economic growth, getting control of the spike in murders, and ensuring that young people can find meaningful employment. The organization says, having not heard from the Prime Minister for months, it feels like a betrayal of her oath of office for her now to finally emerge and not engage in constructive politics. Meanwhile, President of Young Jamaica, Howard Chamberlain, says the Andrew Holness-led JLP is ready to elevate the discussion and focus on the issues.
Residents in the corporate area can expect water restrictions to continue for some time as water levels at the Mona Reservoir and the Hermitage Dam remain at critically low levels. Addressing a Rotary Club of St. Andrew meeting last night, President of the NWC, Mark Barnett, said the level as of yesterday at the Mona Reservoir was at 20%.
As of today, we have just about 20% of stored volume at the Mona Reservoir. 20%. And it is not 20% that is practicable, usable either. The volume of water that remains in the reservoir is really that which it cannot be pulled from the reservoir without a pump. Cannot flow out of the reservoir as it is now without we pumped it into the treatment plant. So that is the level that exists at Mona.
Barnett says the level at the Hermitage Dam was 41%.
We are a little bit much better out that side because we estimated we have about 41% of storage capacity in the Hermitage Dam. And I'm giving you exact numbers. I hope tomorrow no one calls me to tell me why aren't we still regulating, because as long as we're at this level and I am in charge, regulation shall be the order of the day.
And the NWC president says the conditions have also worsened in the eastern parishes, including St. Mary and St. Thomas.
We have a very serious situation in St. Mary, and we also have a very serious situation in St. Thomas. Unfortunately, the circumstances that exist does not lend itself for alternate supply as they are, and it really requires some level of investment.
Barnett says if the conditions continue, as reports surface of no increase in rainfall well into next year, residents can expect either a continuation of or a further increase in the current restrictions.
I am not sure, based on the projection, we're not likely to see any appreciable rainfall or the break of what is called the El Niño effect before next year's spring. It simply means while we are pankering along now and distributing what we have, we are expecting the situation to get worse. And not only from the point of view that we're going into a primary rainfall season any time now up to November. In NWC, as November ends, let's say for us, when the last shower of rain as we experience it in November, that's when our dry season starts in NWC.
Meanwhile, Barnett is calling on the private sector to play its role in helping Jamaica to solve its water shortage problem. He says wells which were previously closed due to nitrification levels in water can be reopened and restructured in such a way that they provide water for use in daily activities outside of consumption.
One of the easier ways to work with it is if we can activate these wells and complement what we would produce under normal circumstances from, say, our Constant Spring or Mona facilities. Mix that water, bring the nitrates level down, and at the same time reduce our takeoff from those facilities under normal. So that is the idea, to ensure that there is some complementary activity.
Barnett has also called for legislative changes to be made regarding access to the water at the Rio Cobre.
The idea is to look at, in the long run, construct at least, in the first instance, a 10 million gallon water treatment plant on the Rio Cobre. Even though the Rio Cobre is low during this period, it still has adequate water that could complement what is produced in Kingston and alleviate the problem. However, there are issues that has to be overcome as it relates to that. There must be a change in the legislative framework as it relates to access to the Rio Cobre water. Currently, as it is, the NIC has the water rights to that water source. So there need to be a look at that.
Barnett says while he knows that the NWC has much to do with regard to improving their system, there also needs to be a change in the mindset of Jamaicans regarding the use of the commodity.
I would be the first to tell you that the NWC must fix up its business. There's absolutely no way I should be producing 10 gallons of water and I'm losing 5 and still in business. That's not an efficient business. So, without any doubt, we must correct some of the things that are happening within the NWC. The NWC as an entity is not the only person to be blamed. We who are benefiting from the product must share our fair share of the blame, because you don't pay on time and you don't pay at all. And who don't pay on time or don't pay any at all, there are those who also steal and steal repeatedly.
President of the National Water Commission, NWC, Mark Barnett. The NWC president says going forward, the commission intends to promote the conservation of water, increase use of technology, and increase the compliance rate of consumers.
The Ministry of Health has activated its emergency protocols after today's sick-out by registered nurses, with an overall average attendance at 52%. At several health facilities across the island. The ministry says while there's been no official notification of industrial action by the executive of the Nurses Association, the ministry has alerted the Ministries of Finance and Planning and Labour and Social Security. Health Minister Fenton Ferguson says the EOC has been activated and emergency protocols are in place to ensure that operations at health facilities are not severely hampered. He says the EOC will ensure the ongoing monitoring of attendance of nurses and the impact on service delivery, provide central direction and guidance to the regional health authorities and service delivery points, and determine the nature of the intervention required. Reports are that nurses at Cornwall Regional, in St. James, Kingston Public Hospital, the University Hospital, and the Black River Hospital in St. Elizabeth have called in sick. According to the head of the NAJ, Janet Farr, nurses are upset about the government's protracted delay in paying retroactive money from the reclassification of the health sector.
Money was set aside and then all of a sudden it flies through the gate. I don't know what it is. We need a timeline for the reclass money and it must be dealt with as a matter of urgency.
NAJ President Janet Farr, she says the NAJ members are not prepared to move forward with wage negotiations until the matter of retroactive payments associated with the health sector reclassification of some 2 years ago is settled.
41-year-old correctional officer Devon Phillips has been freed of charges of possession of ganja, dealing in ganja, and breaches of the Correctional Services Act. The Spanish Town St. Catherine resident was freed after a no-case submission by defense lawyer Tom Tavares Finson. When the matter came before the Corporate Area Resident Magistrates Court yesterday, the police officer responsible for the exhibit could not identify it. Tavares Finson argued that since the exhibit could not be identified, then Phillips should not be called upon to answer to the charges. The magistrate agreed and freed Phillips. Phillips was charged in 2013 after his supervisor allegedly caught him in possession of 4 ounces of ganja at the Tower Street Adult Correctional Center.
As the West Kingston Commission of Inquiry continued today, a resident of Tivoli Gardens testified that she saw a soldier kill an unarmed man believed to be of unsound mind during the May 2010 police military operations. Minette Lindsay told the commission that Major Garth Anderson was sitting on a railing close to where the man who she identified as Sidney Clark was shot. Major Anderson was one of the JDF commanders during the operation. Recounting the circumstances under which Clark was shot and killed, Lindsay said an armored vehicle with men rounded up in the West Kingston community came to Dreckett Place to collect other detainees. Noting that the truck was already packed with detainees, she said she overheard one soldier saying those who cannot hold into the truck should run. Lindsay insisted that she saw the incident and a lot of people were there when it happened. She said Clark's body remained on Dreckett Place for 2 days before it was removed by another group of soldiers. However, in the latest twist of evidence given today, witness Minette Lindsay backtracked on evidence given earlier that she saw a soldier shoot a man of unsound mind. She changed her evidence after the senior counsel for the Tivoli Commission, Garth McBean, confronted her with the post-mortem report showing that Sidney Clark was shot in the abdomen and chest, not in the head. She said she got the impression he was shot in the head after an 11-year-old relative of the victim who identified his body said his head, quote, mash up. And that's your local news. For international news, we join the BBC.
BBC News with Neil Nunes. Hundreds of migrants, many of them from Syria, remain stranded on the border between Hungary and Serbia. A fence has shut off informal crossings and main roads between the two countries have been blocked by the Hungarian authorities. The U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has discussed the conflict in Syria with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in their third phone call in 10 days. Washington has accused Moscow of boosting its military presence in Syria. Russia has said it's helping Damascus combat IS militants. In Syria itself, government-held parts of the city of Aleppo have been heavily bombarded by rebel rocket fire. The British-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says at least 38 people were killed, 14 of them children. The Saudi authorities have taken action against the Bin Laden Group construction company after one of its cranes collapsed onto the Grand Mosque in Mecca on Friday. More than 100 worshippers were killed. The former First Lady of Guatemala, Sandra Torres, will stand against a television comedian in a presidential runoff election in October. The United States has warned North Korea to refrain from what it called irresponsible provocation after the communist state said it had resumed normal operations at its main nuclear facility. The U.S. State Department asked North Korea to focus on fulfilling its international obligations rather than aggravating tensions. The founder of Facebook says the social network is to add a dislike button to the website. Mark Zuckerberg said the company had been asked many times to provide an alternative to the widely used like button used to respond to posts. The president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, has read out the wrong speech at the opening of Parliament. It's thought Mr. Mugabe, who is 91, repeated a speech he delivered last month. BBC News.
Broadcast Jamaican and Newstalk 93 FM now gear the news in the Jamaican language.
Good evening. My name is Kadeen Marshall and this are the news in the Jamaican language. Generation 2000 G2K said them not like what the Education Minister Ronald Thwaites said after being accused some people in the Jamaica Labour Party JLP at one PMP conference in the Southwest constituency where the Prime Minister run. Thwaites been answer some people was support Shasim Simila, nor the none, and that caused so much cost in the PMP. According to Mate Samuda, who are the G2K president, if the PMP supported them across to the Prime Minister nor the nothing, Thwaites must go talk to them and allow the JLP alone. One witness tell a Tivoli Garden inquiry such as see one soldier shoot one madman who never have no gun in the 2010 operation for find Christopher Doddle's coke. Minette Lindsay tell the commission such as see some soldier shot one madman before Major Guard Anderson where one Jamaica Defence Force soldier. She said them group up some man and tell them to lay down upon the hot concrete. She said some of the soldier them been and kick the man them in them face and a step up upon them hand. She said one of the soldiers tell the man them could hold upon the truck for run and one madman named Sydney run and one soldier shot him in him head. On top of that, she said the same JDF major saved enough people life in a Lizard town and stop the soldier them from beat up the people them in the area. The National Works Agency NWA are going to do some work upon one part of the North Coast Highway. Them start work upon the Coral Spring part of the highway. This are the part of the road where regular boy Steve Shorty Malcolm been dead pan. Them are go fix up about 12,000 meters of the road pan the part of the highway there. The work start yesterday and I got done by Friday. On top of that, the NWC fix up the road them will lead from the Braco Hotel, Harmony Hall and the Barwood Main Road. News from foreign. One hunter in Zimbabwe where police been charged over the death of Cesar the lion get locked up cause him been a try bring in some sable antelope animal in the country the wrong way. Them lock up Theo Brankers after them find him with 29 antelope are coming to South Africa. Police been lock up Brankers cause them claims that him been a run one illegal hunt where help Walter Palmer, one dentist from America, kill Cesar the lion. People all over the world been accused about the killing of Cecil and Palmer just gone back at work cause him been a hide. My name is Khadeen Marshall and that are the news in the Jamaican language.
Broadcast Jamaican and Newstalk 93 FM just get the news in the Jamaican language.
The 5 o'clock Sports Roundup is brought to you by Newstalk 93 FM, life-changing radio.
Good afternoon. With your 5 o'clock sports roundup here on Newstalk 93 FM, I am Mikhail Drama Johns and we begin with football. This evening's action in the KSA Business House 5-a-side competition will see First Heritage Cooperative facing Toys R Us Limited, Kingston Bookshop Limited playing Scotiabank Group B, Spanish Grain Store Challenge T. Geddes Grant, and the Transport Authority meet Fontana Pharmacy all at 6:30 p.m. Then at 7:15 p.m., Terra Nova All Suite Hotels play Alcor Windows and Doors, KLAS play Office of the Prime Minister OPM, Restaurants of Jamaica play Care, and Bank of Jamaica BOJ play Guardsman Group Limited. All matches will be played at the National Water Commission NWC Playfield in Mona. And latest results in the competition saw Massey Gas Pro beating Continental Baking Company 3-0, Maritime and Transport playing to a 1-1 stalemate with Jamaica Brawlers, Caramed falling 1-0 to Norbrook Packaging, UTEC falling by a similar 1-0 to Sangster's Bookstore, and the Transport Authority also beating VMBS 1-0. Meanwhile, Connect Services earned an easy 3 points and 3 goals as Business Access TV were a no-show for their fixture. And further afield, Manchester United have confirmed that Luke Shaw today suffered a double leg fracture in their Champions League clash versus PSV Eindhoven. The incident occurred 15 minutes into the 2-1 Group B defeat. And That's Manu who lost the match. The left back was clipped in the PSV box by Mexican defender Hector Mourinho. The game was stopped for almost 10 minutes, after which the 20-year-old Manu player was given oxygen before being put onto a stretcher and taken off. In other games today, it was also a 2-1 loss for Manchester City, who faced Italian side Juventus. Spanish giants Real Madrid earned the day's biggest win as Cristiano Ronaldo led them to a 4-0 blanking of Shakhtar Donetsk with a hat-trick. Still on football, Arsenal midfielder Jack Wilshere requires surgery on a hairline fracture of his left leg and is expected to be out for 3 months. The 23-year-old broke a fibula in August, but was expected to return to training following September's international break. However, the club has said he needs to have a plate inserted in his leg. FIFA President Sepp Blatter should face a criminal investigation for selling undervalued World Cup television rights to Jack Warner, the governing body's former anti-corruption advisor said yesterday. Mark Spith, a Swiss professor of criminal law, said Blatter is a likely target in a Swiss federal investigation of criminal mismanagement at FIFA. And moving on to cricket, former West Indies batsman Brian Lara has thrown his full backing behind newly appointed Test skipper Jason Holder. According to the legendary batsman, the way Holder handled the one-day captaincy during this year's ICC Cricket World Cup is proof he can handle the challenges of the Test captaincy. And England have bolstered their specialist coaching staff for the Test and limited over series against Pakistan and the World T20 with the appointments of Myla Jawardene and Paul Collingwood. Jawardene will work with the Test side during the warm-up period in the UAE and the first Test against Pakistan in Abu Dhabi, which starts on October 13. Meanwhile, Collingwood, the former England limited overs captain who played 197 ODIs and 35 T20s alongside his 68 Tests, will then work with the limited overs setup during the one-day and T20 series against Pakistan and then at the World T20 in India next year. Meanwhile, on the day he was called up to his first England Test squad, Zafar Ansari suffered an open dislocation of his left thumb against Lancashire at Old Trafford and was sent to hospital. Finally, in athletics, a list published by the World Anti-Doping Agency WADA has placed restriction on Jamaica sports doctor Carlton Fraser from working with athletes or other persons. He was among 104 athlete support personnel named worldwide. And that's it for the 5 o'clock sports roundup here on Newstalk 93 FM. I am Mikhail Drama Johns saying stay tuned for the business news and weather report.
The 5 o'clock sports roundup was brought to you by Newstalk 93 FM, life-changing sports radio.
"29 minutes after 5 and time for business news. On the local stock market today, the index advanced by 336.73 to close at 98,517.75. The junior market declined by 11.76 to close at 954.62. Overall, market activity resulted from trading in 21 stocks. 6 advanced, 7 declined, 8 traded firm. Sagicor Real Estate was today's volume leader. Stocks advancing: D&G, Grace, Broilers, Mayberry, Scotia Group, and Scotia Investments. Stocks declining: Berger, Carib Cement, Carreras, Pan Jam Investments, Sagicor Group, Sagicor Real Estate, X-Fund, Supreme Ventures. And on the foreign exchange market, the U.S. dollar closed at 118.72, the pound 181.87, the Canadian $88.67, and the euro $134.07. That's business news.
And now we take a look at the weather. There is a trough across Jamaica which will linger across the island and the Central Caribbean over the next 2 days. Thereafter, a tropical wave will become the dominant feature. In the forecast for tonight, conditions will be partly cloudy.
To end the news, the main points. PNP rejects offer from Kern Spencer to represent Northeast St. Elizabeth.
Former Prime Minister Bruce Golding says the Caribbean Court of Justice CCJ is dead in the water because it was badly handled from the start.
Meanwhile, water restrictions are to continue in the corporate area despite recent rainfall.
And resident of Tivoli Gardens backtracks on her claim that she saw a soldier kill a man believed to be of unsound mind during the Tivoli incursion.
That's your 5 o'clock news roundup here on Newstalk 93 FM. I'm Errol Lee.
And I'm Andre Bernard.
The evening edition is next.